Hey everyone, and welcome to 5-Minute Fridays. Today's video is part 3 of our little prayer series. And so I encourage you, if you've missed part 1 or part 2, you can check them out in the 5-Minute Fridays playlist. And so today we're going to look at how God answers our prayers. God answers prayers in numerous different ways, but today we're going to look at 3 ways. One of them is our most favorite way, and that's when God gives us what we petition for or what we're interceding for, and that is when he says yes. Our most unfavorite way is when God says no, which he does a lot. And finally, the most challenging way that God answers prayer sometimes is when he says wait or we don't hear from him at all. And those are all good answers to prayer because God knows best. I want to give you just a few examples of prayer in my life that have these answers to them. Yes, no, and wait. So just recently, last week, my son Samuel came down with a fever. And, we prayed for him real quick and we ended up calling the doctor and giving him some medicine. But it got to the point where he was just so uneasy and just crying so much. And so I was sitting there on the couch. I put my hand on his leg and I started praying for him. And after about 30 seconds, he just stopped crying and his fever broke soon after that. Now, does that maybe because of the medicine? Yes, but I know it was because of answered prayer as well. And God does that. He loves to answer our prayers right away. Another example in my life of prayer when God says to wait is my own salvation or conversion story. I got saved about 10 years ago in my early 20s. And up until that point before then, I really wanted nothing to do with church, religion, or a relationship with God. But my grandparents, who had been believers my whole entire life, had faithfully prayed for me for 20 years. They were invested in my life, and they never stopped praying. And finally, God answered that prayer, and I surrendered my life to the Lord. So I encourage you, if you have prodigal children or prodigal grandchildren, or if you've been praying the same prayer for years, be faithful. Don't give up. God answers prayers. When God says no, don't be discouraged because God knows better. It says in Isaiah 55:9 that his ways are higher than our ways and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. You see, God is omniscient, omnipresent, and he's sovereign. He is everywhere and he sees everything. He sees the beginning from the end and in between. And so when God says no or he says to wait, he knows better. And whatever he has for us is truly what we need. You see, patience and faith can be built when God doesn't answer our prayers right away. If God always gives us what we want, we're never going to mature in our faith. And that's what the Christian life is. It is sanctification, growing more like the Holy Lord and less like our sinful selves. And so during tests and trials, God is building our patience and our faith. And another thing that he is doing is God is working behind the scenes. And we don't see that. And God knows different circumstances and things that are going on that we don't see. And he's working inside of us as well. And we see a great example of this in the Bible, in the Old Testament, with the story of Hannah and her son Samuel. You see, Hannah had been barren for many years, and she only wanted a son. And she prayed for years and years, and she cried out to the Lord. And it was so hard for her, especially because her husband Elkanah had another wife who had children. And this wife would throw it in her face and would upset Hannah so much. Well, finally, Hannah got to the point where she said, Lord, if you would just give me a son, I will give him back to you. You can have him. He can be raised in the house of the Lord. And so that's where God wanted Hannah to get to. And he finally opened up her womb and gave her a son. And she named him Samuel, which means heard of God. And God also opened her womb at the perfect timing because the priest at the time, Eli, had 2 wicked sons who could not become the next priest of Israel. And so here comes Samuel, and Eli trained him, and he trained him well, and Samuel became the next priest. And he drew the people, the nation of Israel, back to God because at that time it was a dark time in their history and they were not following God. So we need to remember that God is always working inside of us, working inside of others, and working in circumstances. I want to finish with this verse in our prayer series. And now this verse was specifically for the nation of Israel, but I think it applies to us, our communities and our nation right now as well. A lot of us know it. It is 2 Chronicles 7:14. And it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their lands. If you look at the news any day, or if you go to work, or if you leave your house, you see the evil that is going on, and you see our nation is slipping. You see people in our communities, in our states, in our nation, just evil is lurking everywhere, and God is getting kicked out of schools and in the public arena. And so God promises us if we will pray and if we will seek his face and if we share him, he can draw us back and he can save our friends, our family, our communities, and our nation. And so I encourage you, seek the Lord diligently. Spend time praying all day and be okay with whatever answer God has for you. Hey, God bless you. Thanks for tuning in today.